Hello everybody, this is Plywood coming at you with yet another Pampas and Selene speedrun of Solo Any Percent, done in 58 minutes and 18 seconds, the second ever sub-hour run in this category. So I did have a 59-minute run before this one that you can find in the description of this video if you care to watch. That is uncommentated, but I was not terribly satisfied with how that run went, so I never published it to YouTube. This one is much more publishable in my opinion. Now, not too long ago, I was speculating that sub-hour would be somewhat tough, but it ended up being a lot easier than I thought it would be, and that's thanks to some of the other people who have been looking at this game and routing other categories. It still is the case that at this moment, as far as I'm aware of, I'm the only person who has run Solo any percent. However, thanks to, in particular, Grandius and the Zeroth Cat, along with Algorithm, who is routing and running the one-hit KO challenge run, they have found some things in this game that have helped make this category a lot faster. Though some of the things in this run are developments I have created as I've tried to pick apart any sort of find I can make to make this run better. So, very important to note that you can get arrows by that snake on the top right. You'll get 50 arrows for taking out that barrel. However, we are going to avoid picking up arrow drops and instead opt for getting money later on. Originally, I thought it would be a good idea to either get that barrel or finish the bat blood quest for Apollo to get arrows. But the math ended up working out in such a way that it would be better to get the money from a secret chest in the first dungeon. For a very simple reason, that arrows are not currency, and we can get more currency and more bang for our buck by getting money later. So that is something that is relevant, but it still is a bit of an open question whether the currency routing, and of course the ever-present question for me is whether getting the grip gloves are worth it or not. That being said, I am pretty happy with where this route is in general, though it is very tough to keep everything in track in your head as you're doing this run. It requires a lot of practice to get everything flying well. Oftentimes you'll see me chug from time to time as I process in my brain, right, I'm doing this next. Even with my notes, it sometimes takes a moment. I am pretty happy with the slime burn routing, though. I don't know what would be better, per se. So we're going to get the blood quest, but we are going to avoid collecting the blood. Basically, roughly speaking, doing that blood quest to get the, I believe it's 40 arrows, roughly about 7 seconds. It depends on how quickly you get all the bat blood, and that's not consistent because bats are random. They fly randomly, they leave randomly, so you can't really predict how much time it would take to get the relevant blood. Obviously on 100% we need to do that quest, but on any percent it is just better to avoid doing it. The other thing that's very helpful is not getting the scorpion poison quest, because then you get drops here. So you're going to see me screw this up. There is a very kooky glitch that can save some time if you execute it well enough, that I'll call the bubble barrel bounce. If you use the bubble soul gem ability from a particular spot, they can bounce off the top of the barrel and then go through the wall and to the next level up and take out the scorpions that way while you wait for the flame. Very helpful, but it is a bit tricky. It's more of a swag strategy. It can be faster, but I think it's mostly for show, as far as I'm concerned. So we get our feathers, making sure to not use all scorpion poison there. And then we head back down this way. This is slightly faster than haloing back. So you'll see me kill worms here, and this is just for later on. You might as well do it now. You do an extra there, and that's just part of the math. Before I was landing on the left platform for the plant, even though we weren't getting the plant, which is essentially just a holdover from when we would actually get the antidote in any percent, but it's not necessary, so you can just land on the right side. Sadly, I got trolled by worms here. Right when I'm about to go take out the mushroom, of course, one of the worm pieces hits it. That's so funny. It's a great joke that the game played on me there. I wouldn't say that this game is heavy on the luck and the RNG factor. It is relevant, but most of this game is really on your execution and your ability to adapt to luck. Certainly, if the game was extremely optimized, luck would be a very relevant factor, but even this run is beatable with less than stellar luck as long as you can execute better. So now we are on our way to getting the portal. Nice little strategy I saw from Grandius using the coyote frames, coyote jump, coyote timing to do a bit of a faster execution of getting past the board, though ended up taking a lot of damage for that. So the money is going to work out pretty well for us. The only part where it's a little sketchy is here. This is the one spot in the run that you need to be careful that you don't overspend. So I'm at 84 gold. That is essentially perfect. You want to make sure that you have at least 80 gold. I believe 80 is the number going into the next shop purchase. One thing I still had trouble with in this run, because I just made the change of not collecting bat blood, is making sure to use Selene instead of arrows when it's a good idea. That boar attack, you want to land on the left edge of the pit wall. That way you can take out the boar and not take unnecessary damage. This lava area is really perilous. Flame is just like nearly touching me, and I almost got hit by the burner flame there. It's just super trolly. So I had just enough to get to full HP and buy the shoes, the boots. But hey, that's why this chest is here. We get our money back, basically. I don't like this room. This seems like the best way to approach it, but I really don't like that room. It's not the worst room in the run. I will note what I think is the worst room in the run. Not because of the execution, but because of the precision of it. It's like a high APM moment, but it's just I should say APS, I guess, actions per second. Actions per minute. It's a little bit too pulled out, but needless to say. So we take out the brooms and then pick up the ever-important tome, which makes Selene a beast later on. Key thing here is we will be killing some of these axe guards. That is a new inclusion to the route. The axe guards have a very powerful soul gem ability, which will come into play on a boss later on. That was a really tight fireball there to kill that ghost. Very, very tight. I don't like it being that tight, but it worked out. I almost burned myself, which would have been really bad. So we just buy out our arrows. You could really max out there now with this routing. It used to be before that you'd want to hold off on buying as many arrows, but with the current routing, that is not a necessity, because we will be getting another secret chest fairly soon. So you want to use a mine here, because when you're on fire, if you change character, you can change direction on the levitator for whatever reason. If you take other sources of damage, that won't happen, and the mine is just very convenient for that. Very tight coyote jump. It's quite easy to screw that one up. Another thing I cribbed from Grandius. Grandius and the Zero of Cats co-op runs are really worth watching, by the way. It is a very different run and much harder to follow. It's essentially two runs happening at once. And as you can imagine, it's quite dazzling to see. So now we get the Essence quest. And just start heading over to Cyclops. I used to arrow that bat to the left of the starting room, the spawn room with the gate, but since we are not getting the bat blood, we can just avoid it and avoid doing the jump. That's a very small time save though, on its own. Airspeed is slower than running, but a little tiny baby jump is not a huge deal. How much of a huge deal is it? I can't say, but it's not much of one. So, going to utilize the ghost ability here, actually. It seems like staggering the ghost is actually quite good here. What this allows me to do is avoid having to do as much damage to those square heads. Like reverse thwomps, I suppose. And they go through floors. Not a big time save, and if you watch the co-op run, you'll see that they use different powers here, which is worth remembering that the Soul Gem routing here, while I think is pretty good, there's always a possibility that you may want to go out of your way somewhat to get something else. Broadly speaking, I try to avoid that unless I know for certain it's worth it. Anytime you have to go out of your way to get something, you need to make sure that it's worth the time. So here is the secret chest that I've routed back in. Yeah, if you were not getting grip gloves, you could get the one that's by Pyros, but we are getting grip gloves, so we're gonna ignore that one. This boss is very easy. I've never really practiced it per se, but I've played this boss many times, so that's essentially practice. And we're gonna get Pampas first. Usually I would do Selene first, but the approach for Arachne has shifted a little bit. Whether it's really necessary is a different question, but I'm excited to at least show it. But since Selene is so low, I'm going to just let Pampas cover us as we go into the sewers here, which is just as well. Pampas is, generally speaking, the faster character when you're navigating in the early game. He has a higher DPS. Nice little way to avoid the frog there. There is a faster strategy, but it is really precise. Very, very precise, where you avoid getting damaged by the tongue. It's a tongue skip. One of the most wacky strategies I've ever found in a speedrun that I get to call frog tongue skip. This is just the sort of things that come with the territory. So we get our grip gloves. It makes us climb faster and avoid falling off ladders when we take damage. Pretty useful. We hit the save and then head on down to Hades so we can have that quest line start. Very important quest line. You need to do this quest line to beat the game. And so we bundle everything we need to do in the sewers together. Get the grip gloves, get the fall below gem. We killed 9 of these oozes, slimes, goos, whatever you want to call them. And just make sure that you actually use your power from the Cyclops dungeon here to get rid of it. We intentionally hold that so we don't get the spike ball power while we're going to Hades. We're going to be using the spike ball later. And it's going to be pretty cool, if I do say so myself. Nice little strategy here that I believe I saw Zeroth come up with. You can jump and avoid the axe from that axe guard. Very nice. And this is another nice little routing optimization from Algorithm. Not falling. You're not supposed to fall here. You're supposed to jump. But we're going to hit the save and then fall down like we do on 100%, the 100% route. And we're going to go straight to Arachne here because this is a bit faster, several seconds faster than going from Uranus. So we just hit that now and save several seconds that way. Very nice efficiency there. Routing optimizations. We love to see it. Again, right here we get to have drops from the scorpions because we never got that poison quest. So technically you never have to go to Asclepius, but I think it's better ultimately. I believe so, because you need to go over there twice. Yeah, twice in this route. So this is also a route revision. I think since the last time this run was on YouTube, we are going to go left. And this on average is about 7 seconds faster, but this is a really tough execution area of the run anyways, because there's a lot of coyote jumps that you can do. That jump right there is the reason why we go left now. But this room can be a bit spooky, these purple whiz robes. Now you don't have to go to the save first. You could alternatively just go straight for Pandora's first. However, the reason why I do this, they seem to be about the same speed, and by hitting the save, it gives me an insurance policy in case I accidentally press Y when I shouldn't and fall below when I shouldn't. We get the polymorph. Technically, you don't need this. You could save picking this up until the very end of the game. However, you have to pick it up, and the utility of polymorph is, in my opinion, way too strong to pass up. It resolves some problems throughout our run. So as you can see, we now just go straight to Arachne and not go through Uranus. So that's helpful. Still doing Arachne second, as the fist power-up is very useful for the next dungeon we do. I've tried as well as I could to stack the dungeons in such a way that is logical, but you could opt to do it in a different order. But I do believe that you want to do Python last, due to the strategy you'll be seeing later on. Try to do a movement setup to make sure that face moves in a consistent way. This gesture is not consistent. This gesture will troll you if you're not careful. They do all different kinds of patterns. I don't know if there's some way to manipulate this. I know in Unmetal, which is another game by Unepic Fran, there's a way to set up RNG in the run by loading a save. Maybe you could do the same thing with the Jester or some other luck in this game. I haven't investigated that. So we use the bubbles here. This allows us to avoid a cycle on the bottom fist. I almost feel like you might want to actually go for it there with the ladder for the gravestone and just take out the fist as it's approaching. It might be faster than waiting for the fist. Really silly mistake. I pressed the fist too early, so that loses me a fist for the next dungeon. Not the worst mistake in the world, but definitely annoying. So this setup allows me to just do Pampas only. We're gonna bait Arachne over here and then stand over on that line to avoid taking damage, but doing decent damage, and then we just kill Arachne on second cycle like before. And by doing this, we can just avoid taking damage on one of our characters, which is nice. Now, I did the Pampas heal, or the Pampas upgrade on first boss, just to make things a little bit safer for Arachne, but technically I don't think that's necessary. What you want to do here is do a late coyote jump onto that gravestone. It is faster than the old strategy of throwing a fireball onto the gravestone, but like many strats in this game, it's only faster if you get it the first try, so I ended up failing twice and said forget about it. These are some of the most annoying enemies in the game. You'll see right... Yep, he just showed up right there. So annoying. This is a tough dungeon. There's just a lot of annoyances. The bouncing skulls, the blue wizards. You just tend to take a lot of damage in this dungeon if you're trying to speedrun. I'm trying to move along here. This screen as well. If you had a particular soul gem ability, you could hit that one up top and avoid dealing with the blue wizards. So we're gonna hit the save and then halo back to heal, just in case things go wrong. Technically, we could hold off on that. So there is a particular setup we're going to go for here to make the RNG somewhat consistent. We wait, and then we start arrowing to get the guy across the way, and then stay in the corner and just spam arrows until we see where they spawn. Here we're going to jump across to hit the save, so we can immediately come back down here after we get the final rune. And here, thankfully we have a backup. You could just take out the skulls and maybe that would be better, I'm not sure. But you just need to hit that 3 times and then you can avoid using the fist. The fist is definitely faster there, but it wasn't a huge loss. So this is a setup that I saw from Algorithm. You can actually throw a fireball and do some extra damage to Scorpios at the start. And you really shouldn't take damage in this fight if you know when to jump. Or if you're taking damage, it's from the dirt, and the dirt really isn't that threatening. You just need to wait for the top. The stinger from Scorpios peaks, and when that peak happens, you need to jump. It raises the stinger, then it peaks the stinger, P-E-A-K, not like peak interest, but like the peak of a mountain. And then you want to jump. Make very certain not to hit the bats there. We are holding off on getting the bat ability until later. So here's Boar Rush. This is the most annoying soul gem ability in the game, because we want to use all three of them to take out gravestones in the next dungeon, but it's either unreliable or just very precise in terms of your positioning. Nice little coyote jump there. So I did position it correctly there, but you need to move out of the way, because if you don't, the turnstile, as I like to call them, will knock you back. And then I used the boar ability again, which was not the right play. And you will see why later. It would have been better for me to just go through that as normal. So there's going to be a nice routing efficiency later on in this dungeon, which I'm happy about from, once again, Algorithm, so thank you. I don't like this dungeon that much in the run. It's a lot of wait for the boulders, and then the stuff where we get skips it just feels very difficult and tight. So here, this is probably the worst screen in the game, in my opinion. There's this very particular position you want to be in, and I try to line up with Selene's robe to make that gravestone pickup consistent, but it is so difficult. If someone could figure out how to make that really consistent on 60 FPS, I would be very happy, because to me that is one of the worst screens in the game. And you sadly can't use the B ability. I tried, but it doesn't work, because they're technically arrows. So hitting that save is a bit more efficient. You hit that save as a waypoint, and then we come back down this way. That way we are not taking extra walking distance if we were just porting back to where we were before the previous save to this one. It's a nice little optimization. Now, if you were perfect, you would have your third boar ability here and then use it to avoid having to hit that turnstile. That would only save a little bit of time, probably a couple seconds. It's not that big of a deal. It's really the first two that you want to hit. That one is not as important. So this boss has changed a bit. Fran removed the spike pit on the right side, which definitely made this boss easier. We can put another mine down and not have to deal with such a, what I would say, kind of claustrophobic arena. I didn't really mind the fact that the spike pit was there, but I get why it was changed. Of course, now that we don't have Boar Rush, we're just using it for skips, we have to take out Moax the old-fashioned way. Now, technically, I could go get a Soul Gem ability. If I were to pick one up, I'd probably get the Bee Sting. The Bee Sting does really good damage, but I don't know if it's actually worth the time investment. So very important that when we go to this this dungeon, we essentially have max arrows, or very close to it, like 90, because you are going to use a ton of arrows here. The fastest way to take out these guys, these mud golems, is to slash an arrow together. You can also throw 2 fireballs as well, which is good at a distance, but generally speaking, you want to stay as Pampas because we need to mine these guys. This is not an optional quest. This is required for the Hades quest line. So it's a bit annoying, but I've tried my best to make it as consistent as I could. So now that we have Spike, the Spike gem, this will allow us to potentially skip 2 gravestones. Sadly, I screwed up the second skip, but it's not a huge deal. This is the new crab skip that I believe Pirandius found. Thanks to coyote frames, we can jump in just the right position to hit the gravestone. Sadly, you can be on the lip of the platform and not be able to plant the mines, and I was in that position, which was very annoying, so I had to move past the golem. So you really want to try to limit the amount of damage these spike balls take, because like you want to use Pampas there to destroy that that one spike ball. You slash so you avoid taking too much damage, because otherwise when you try to take out this gravestone, it's going to fail. I was just 1 hit away, so saving 1 hit would have made it work fine. So you have to be very careful about that, but again, not a huge deal. I want to note it in case anyone's using this to learn the game. These positions are very specific. Try to wait long enough and position the mines in such a way that the mines finish off the golems. Now, this heal is not really necessary, but I did not want to have any deaths in this run, and I didn't, so, you know, we're being very cautious and safe. The time for being very risky in this run still hasn't happened yet, which is a good thing. It's not that strict yet, though we're inching closer to that, certainly, but it's still not there yet. You don't lose that much by going back to heal anyways. It's 5 seconds, 6 seconds, something along those lines. It's not that big of a deal. Maybe more like 10, I don't know. But look at this luck right here. I can't get up. Like, it's just not happening. So we didn't get a 2-cycle Nephili. Not ideal, but Nephili just trolled me and said, "You're not going up the platforms." Well, screw you too. Nephili, the boss of it's easy until it isn't. We love those bosses. Very, very important here that we kill 2 worms. You should kill the lower 2 worms, like going up to go back down doesn't make sense, but you need to kill 2 worms there, and that's for later on. That's for 20 minutes from now. You don't want to drop down the ladder like that, you want to just fall off the edge. So the reason why we want to do Python last is because we are going to take a lot of damage in this dungeon just as part of the course of movement in this dungeon, but also for the boss we're going to take a ton of damage. Make sure to walk when you're speed boosted rather than running, because walking is faster than running for some reason. And then we do the snake skip. Sadly, I screwed up the movement, and I actually failed snake skip, which is Not something I've done before in a run. Quite annoying, but again, not a huge deal. Obviously, all these like 5-second, 10-second mistakes add up, but what you really don't want is to die at the end of a 1-minute boss fight or something like that. That's the really rotten thing, or dying after not having saved in a while. Make sure to get rid of Water Walk, you don't need it. We get our 2 bars going down. It's a race. Which bar will be done first? If you're able to, you try to throw a fireball to hit the snake on the opposite end. The timing is pretty tight though, but when you land it, it feels very good. So in the previous routing, we would basically be dead broke here, but now that we get that chest in Dungeon 1, we have a little bit of extra money, which is very nice. I've tried to time out and work out what chests are the best, and as far as I can tell, this is ideal unless we avoid grip gloves. So we throw 2 fireballs and do a late coyote jump. Very important we land that jump, or else we're wasting a lot of time having to go back up. And it's not necessarily that it's a lot of time lost, it's just compared to what we could have been doing, we're losing a lot of time, and then other chests become more worth it. So we use the bombs in the corner to clear out the gravestone and whatnot, and then we port to Ares to get the axe power. This strategy saves, no kidding, 40 seconds over my old run if done correctly, which is wild. This isn't really tough, you just need to pace out the axe hits in such a way that you don't do them all at once, because the boomerang effect, you're not getting more damage by having them all out at once. It's a very fast fight that takes a while to explain, but essentially you use a pause buffer after the blink, the twinkle thing that starts the boss. See where Python is porting to, and then get into position as far away from Python as you can, but sometimes that's not possible. Use slash and arrow and use an axe as it approaches. And then after 2 axe throws, you're going to switch to Selene because Pampas is not going to be able to take another one. And then use Selene to finish it off. Another use of mind boosting here to get down the levitator fast. So I'm very glad that the other runners found that strat. It made a world of difference, and it's certainly the strategy I would recommend to anyone trying to run this category. It does require practice, but it doesn't require the same level of practice, in my opinion, as the old strategy. And besides, it's way faster. And you can do it more safely. You don't have to go pedal to the metal, but you should take damage. You should take damage because you can maximize the amount of damage you're doing at the start. And that's when Python is at its slowest. Really nice routing optimization. We're going to use the gravestone and to get the Uranus chest first rather than second. That way we cut out a little bit of backtracking here. These mini Dracos are also a very annoying enemy. They can troll you really hard. You try to take them out as you move along if you can. And as you can see, we have the Bat Swarm ability, which will be useful in this dungeon to skip having to kill as many golems as you're supposed to. So you port to the save point here, rather than at the start of the dungeon. That is faster as well. And we are going to instead take the center of the dungeon up, which I did not realize. I did not realize when I was initially routing this map that that was faster. But this is a very confusing map. You can go a lot of different ways, but doing it this way is better. The only thing is that you could go right, then left, or left, then right. They both seem to be roughly the same speed. I think the left can be slightly faster, left then right. It also allows me to have an extra bat swarm, which is useful, because if you use bat swarm early and you screw up the setup, then you're losing a lot of time if you're doing right then left. Though I forgot to use it here. You're supposed to use bats right here, that way you can easily and quickly climb up here and avoid taking damage from the mini Dracos. But I just had a brain fart there. Make sure to go to Hecate to get the scepter, because it really amplifies Selene's DPS for this boss. And we get the power there just as a topper, which we'll use in the next dungeon. This boss is not... It can be more efficient, but it's not that tough. I would say this is probably the easiest of the final bosses just to get through. But it can be more efficient, and the action of double jumping and swapping into Fireball is tight. But it's really not that hard of a boss. You could use the Soul Gem ability there. However, I would not recommend it, because you're going to save more time by holding it for the next fight, or the next dungeon. So there is a different strat for that double Axe Guard Levitator room, where you do a damage boost and use the iframes from the damage to avoid the upper Axe Guard. I think it saves about 0.9 or so over the strategy I just showed there. However, if you screw it up, obviously it's slower. Another one of these, it's faster until you screw it up. So try to avoid doing a lot of those in this run, but I'll try to note them as we go along. Very important that you talk to Hecate. I'm not sure if it's better to talk to Hecate first or second. It's probably better to talk to her first. There's a really cool thing you can do where if you slide, if you do the skid slide, you go faster than running, so you can skid off a platform and then change your direction. Very cool. I should have charged Polymorph in the last boss, but I forgot. It's okay, it's not that big of a deal. It's just to take out that head, mounted skull head thing. We get the essence, now we have the earrings, and this allows us to have the fastest movement in the game. Of course, I mess up this movement. I really don't like this part. I just screwed up on my timing here and ended up pressing switch character too soon and falling the wrong way. So you can throw a fireball on the opposite end of that levitator, and that allows you to fall perfectly, but it's better to use the mine and switch correctly. So a bit of an annoying mistake. Make sure to switch characters at the right time, otherwise you will start floating back up the levitator. And since we don't have the ball and chain, we can't go down the levitator. Ball and chain is just not worth picking up when we can just do things better. If we can just do it better ourselves without wasting time, we might as well. I always tend to screw up this area in some way anyways. Sad to say. But we use the double jump blink mechanics very well here, because you can blink. You can switch between the characters freely in air and then use their aerial ability. So that allows us to do a lot of funky stuff. A lot of funky fresh stuff with that. Use that soul gem ability to avoid doing this whole shebang. And then with Zeus's wrath, or the Wrath of Zeus, I believe it's the Wrath of Zeus, we can hit that gravestone. You can get across that gap with just Selene and would be faster, but Pampas adds a little bit of security. Of course, I, mess it up, but don't mind that. Some people would say, Plywood, why are you talking about your mistakes? Like, this is already ridiculous anyways. And to that I would say, I just have to note it for the people who want to beat me. So using the shoes here is very helpful actually for that screen as far as I can tell, and we need to get rid of the shoes, the grip shoes anyways. It allows us to avoid skidding. Because we need this back cannon for Gorgon. Really nice use of damage here. I get knocked up and zap the mini-boss and then let Zeus take care of it. It's a cool little strategy. Very important that we are at max HP for this boss, as we are going to take a lot of damage. Technically, we don't have to do Gorgon right now. We could just go straight to Kraken and do Gorgon later, but it's just better this way. I'm doing more Pampas in this fight, and the opening I do 6 fireballs, and then I finish with Pampas to do some extra damage. You can do 7 fireballs, but the timing is very, very strict, and so I think it's a nice little compromise to use Pampas there instead. It's one of those bosses that really demands you to be on point with your execution, and then it's easy, but if you're not on point, you essentially need to just reset the boss. You're gonna take Gorgon eye damage, and it's really bad. It's very important that we take out a skeleton outside of Kraken, because we are going to be using bones in this dungeon and the next. And it's just a very convenient place to get bones. You'll see plenty of little movement errors here. It is very tough. The movement, skill ceiling for the movement gets very tough at the end of the run because of both double jump and blink. Perfectly positioned blinks, it's very tough for me to even comprehend, like, the level of sheer coolness I'm sure some people who are better at these kinds of games than I am can achieve with enough practice. I look forward to seeing who may get to that point, especially the solo run. The co-op run is very cool, but there's just some really interesting things you can do in this run by the end of it. So you'll see me tap my toes on the ground in the water, and that's so I can blink, because if you don't land your toes somewhere, you can't blink again. And I believe that ends up saving you a little bit of time. So here's a neat little approach for this. You take out the gravestone, you do... One of those bats is actually like, essentially the master bat. Like, the bats like break up into pieces, and one of the pieces is actually the bat you want to take out. That's the one that says to the game, okay, you defeated the boss, so you can just leave and come back. Very weird strat. Very weird strat. Not what's the word I'm looking for? It's not obvious that that is possible. So you really want to switch back to Selene when you're returning over, because it's quite possible that you end up getting over to the right platform too late and then you have to do 3 cycles, which is what happened here. Also make sure you don't start drowning Pampas. Not a great idea. Don't drown after you beat the boss, because then you're gonna have to do the boss again. This has been another plywood tip. And it's so wild to be like, how many mistakes are in this run, but at the end of the day, and this is something I try to emphasize to everyone who's interested in speedrunning, especially games that are not routed as well as they could be, always see what you can do better. Not on an execution level, but from a strategy level. And I look forward to seeing what other fun strats people cook up in this game over time. So I think there's still plenty of unexplored territory. This dungeon really does a number on my left hand, I have to tell you folks. I start tensing up my left hand because the movement here, due to these brains that reverse your movement and the spark balls that you're trying to avoid the damage of, you have to be constantly switching between each character and precisely blinking. I just start getting really tense. Really tense. Every time I go to Pyros, I'm like, man, my left hand is hurting like heck. For example, that double jump blink to hit the save point and go up here is pretty tight. It's a cool route improvement, but it is so tough. Bad movement there. Should have just blinked here. I think this dungeon probably has the highest skill ceiling in terms of movement. This is the slower setup for getting down here again. There is a faster setup where you don't take damage from the brain. But again, like I said earlier, I am just trying to get through the game fairly quickly, not try to implement every faster strategy because it's not necessary. Consistency is king in my book. Try to be more consistent and you will get better results. So we head up here. We hit the save point and get this gravestone. There's this little period where you can move normally with the brains, and an optimal runner would use that and then immediately switch. And that is easier said than done. Thankfully for most of the screens it's not necessary, but it is necessary for the strategy for the faster route. So this is where we go back and take out all these worms. That way we can get Worms Armageddon for Pyros. And we have the last shop of the game. Optimally, that is the last shop you will ever do. Don't really need to max out everything though. You just need enough to get through a little bit of dungeoneering, or rather, I guess, towering, to get to the final boss. Not a whole lot to say about this fight. I mean, you use worms as it's going down to get a lot of damage very quickly. Because essentially, like, the worms start at one point and then expand out. But if you use that in front of someone, they just take all that damage at once, and it's a lot of damage. Big appreciation to the developer for re-implementing 3 worms into the speedrun mode. he decided that it was too strong for casual play, but re-implemented how it was originally in speedrun mode, which is very nice. It saves us a cycle here. Pyros goes in predictable patterns, so as long as you move effectively, you will be fine. Actually, washing off that fire was a bit of a mistake there. It's not necessary. You might as well just hold your bucket for the final boss in case you get burned. But it's fine. So if you did everything well, that's where you would take out Pyros. Make sure to charge a polymorph here, and now we turn in Hades to get the vengeance. Very important. That allows us to open the door to Lich. And just make sure you don't get hit here by this broom. That is the last thing that will hit you that is not in this boss, so... And you really want to enter this boss with full HP. That save is just for safety, but honestly, you don't need to hit that save if you're confident. Of course, like, if I fail this boss, I'm probably just not getting a PB at this point, so at this point it doesn't really matter, but... This boss is tough, and you take a lot of damage, and there is a pretty key mistake I make in terms of my mine arrangements. I do not recommend laying 4 mines there on the top right if there's mines on the opposite side still, because then you are a bit stuck. You know, I'm essentially hoping that it's the table, but it's not going to be the table. It's probably going to be the one up there, so I end up having to take damage just to make it move along quickly. But you really shouldn't do that. There's really only 2 speeds of this fight, slow and fast. Just stay on by that right candelabra on that lightning bolt attack, and then you will be able to time it more effectively, avoiding the lightning. And then I use time slow to make that attack easier and safer. You really only get 1 go at that. After that, you don't. So this was a mistake. I forgot to charge and took a ton of damage on Selene. Really don't want to do that. Do as I say, not as I do. Because now this is very scary. I can't make any mistakes with Selene or else she dies, and she's the main source of my damage. So where is it gonna go? Of course it's going to the most dangerous attack. Of course it is. But I was not going to let this run kill me, so I just stayed below and took out the skulls. Skulls are just very dangerous. You don't want to let those hit you, because if all those hit you at once, you're going to really feel it. And we got through Lich. I use an audio cue here to know when to jump based off of the drone of the song that plays. And then I double jump zap, and that's it. 5818.72 in global time, which is essentially a real time. And that is the first 58 ever, the second sub-hour ever. And still plenty to shave off. I always like leaving a little bit of bait for other people when I speedrun games, because I'm not super into grinding hard. I mean, to be honest with you, I did not really practice all that much after my sub-hour couple... I think it was last week or 10 days ago. We did a little bit of testing, but didn't really practice, and then I came back and did this run after a little bit of practice and a practice run. So hopefully this run will make someone else interested in like, hey, I can beat that, and the answer is yes. This is very beatable. I believe that a 56 is doable. Having watched this run, 56 to me seems quite doable. 55 to be determined, but 56 for sure. And of course 57 is much easier by comparison. I want to provide big thanks and gratitude to the other people who have been playing and speedrunning and challenge running this game, because it's thanks to them, in part, that this run has gotten as fast as it has become. We have now saved over 30 minutes from the initial release run of this category. 30 minutes. That is incredible. Truly incredible to be over 30 minutes faster. And it just goes to show how important routing is in a game like this, a 2D Metroidvania that is so open-ended. There's so many possible solutions to your problems in the game, and creativity is very much rewarded. So I welcome other people challenging this routing and my preconceived notions of what is and isn't possible, what should and should not be done. So I think there's a lot of room for that. I had a lot of fun routing and working on this game. Truly was a great experience, and I hope you've enjoyed this run. I will be updating my speedrun notes to reflect this run, as that will be the current routing for this category. And I'm sure there will be some routing improvements to come, but this is a really good place to be in. I would say that if I were to submit this game to a marathon, it would be about an hour and 2-minute submission time, which is not what I would have expected when I started routing this game. So thank you all very much for watching. I truly appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this run of Pampas and Selene, done in just over 58 minutes.